Hello. Quick voice check before we do anything else. And also let me quickly adjust the title of this town hall. We are sitting at the 8th of this series of the town hall. Hello and welcome. I do hope that enough people are joining in here and are interested in this kind of emergency town hall today. Because for those of you who didn't know, yesterday was in a German city called Ingolstadt, a Bitcoin forum, a conference or a big meetup for Bitcoin, for companies about Bitcoin, for communities about Bitcoin. And we as OSMU, we had a booth there, and we also had the opportunity to speak on a stage about us. So that's the reason why we're here today. That's the reason why I want to talk about it, because I want to share my experience with you guys, because I had the help of 2 community members who came along with me to this event, and it was just lovely to be there, and just being at this conference, at this meetup, and meeting new people and everything else. It was just astonishing. And that's the reason why I want you to listen to this day, because I think that's needed for the people to know what else is brewing. And obviously this was only in Germany, but I do hope that we will see more of those events coming along all over the world. It doesn't matter where this will be. It just matters that there are enough people to talk about it. And so whenever you do have any questions or anything else from the people in the audience, just raise your hand and I will bring you up on stage. And if not, I will try to just entertain you a little bit and explain to you what it was and what it was to be there. And so then let's start right away into it. So the Bitcoin Forum is a meetup and a big conference initialized by a bank, by the so-called Volksbank, Raiffeisenbank. I don't know the exact naming of it, but that was the bank that initialized it, and it's kind of counterintuitive, I'd say, because most of the people would think, okay, something like a bank would never host something like an event that is about Bitcoin, but they did, and they even support plenty of those events and plenty of those companies. So a couple of those companies that have been at this event, they were just there to show off. Thanks. Kniggins posted it in the chat. It was the Volks- und Raiffeisenbank Bayern Mitte e.V. That's the naming of it. Just for the record, I want to say that. Thanks for pointing this out. So they hosted this event, and we had plenty of people there. And I just wanted to give you now a quick introduction into how it looked like and what it was. So the location was quite intriguing. It was a theater. It was the theater of Ingolstadt, and it was kind of big. Imagine with me, you go into this building and you do have a big open space. And it was a little bit tricky to find all those places where you can go and where those staircases are leading to. But the first thing that you do notice is there's a big opening space, and there were a couple of people in there that guided you into the right direction of where you need to go and where you can find what. And then you just go upstairs, and there was some sort of a small opening, and behind that there was the space for, I'd say, plus 20 plus companies that just had a couple of booths there, and we had their companies about just Bitcoin. We also had companies about Bitcoin wallets, Bitcoin marketing in general, a couple of POS systems, so these terminal thingies that you do use when you want to pay, or when you want to pay your bill in a restaurant or somewhere else. And we also had a quite a funny company there. They were selling socks, Bitcoin socks. That was quite nice. I got a pair of them. I'll probably wear them someday in the future. It was lovely. And that was so the main scene that you do see there. And then you had another staircase that was leading up to a smaller section, which was the mining section. And in this mining section were around 9 to 10 companies. Most of them were about hosting and mining providing in general. So you had those small tables with companies that are just presenting their mining devices that they do offer to their customers. And then there were a couple of smaller companies as well. And then we, as OSMU, had a booth there. And I got help from the lovely community member Eddie, who's also currently in the audience, and Ronnie, a friend of mine, who's living next to me here in the southern part of Germany. And we were there at this event and had our booth, and we were just chilling out there and preparing everything. So we had a couple of miners with us, and what did we have with us? We had a Bitaxe with us, we had the QX with us, and I had the Bitaxe Hex with me. And then we also had a couple of merchandise, so just t-shirts with OSMU on it. So you get the point. You want to spread OSMU a little bit more, and that's what we try to do there. So we had our booth there with those two tables, and at 1 p.m. people started rushing into it, and we were then first chilling at our booth, and a couple of people joined in there and were a little bit intrigued and were kind of not sure what we were about, because for those people here in the audience right now, and for those people who are listening in later to this podcast, just check out in the Discord server. There is a channel called Announcements. They will find a picture, and the picture that I posted there is our booth. So we had those two tables, and we had this banner with us which stated OSMU, Open Source Miners United, and obviously a couple of sweets. So we need to fish those people, so sweets is good for fishing. It was amazing, and we were just chilling there and trying to educate those people and telling them what open source miners is about. So obviously the standard, like, we are thinking there's a shift in the mining industry in general, that we want to kind of heal the mindset of people, that we want to try to change a little bit when it comes to how they approach the mining section. And it was quite interesting to see, because we were surrounded by companies who are doing only hosting and selling devices to the people, and not really giving them much of an education. The most part that you have seen there was about the educational part of how much energy does it use, and what kind of temperatures do those devices run at, and how high is your return over X amount of time. So the boring stuff, to be honest. And then this little booth about OSMU, where some weirdos are standing around there with some weird devices that nobody of those that are there have ever seen before. And this was quite interesting. So at 1 p.m. those people rushed in, and first obviously they got upstairs, the first staircase, and then they noticed all those companies down there and looked around there. And later on, like, I'd say half an hour to 45 minutes later, then the people were coming into this mining section and trying to start conversations about mining. And the first couple of people we had were just a little bit, I'd say, a little bit interested in what is this even, what are we doing. So we had a couple of flyers with us, where a couple of general information about us was written on, and this was designed and created by Eddie. He brought them with him, and our first initiative was to actually get them onboarded on what are we, who are we, why are we doing this. And then those people started realizing, hey, these dudes, they do have some mining devices with them. And then things got really interesting, because the few people that were there at the beginning, they didn't really realize the fact that we had those miners with us. But later on, more and more people started to coming around. Obviously, some of them only for the sweets, but most of them were really interested, or some of them also have heard about us, or just wanted to get a little bit more knowledge about the Bitaxe device, or what Open Source Miners United is even about. So to conclude this, we simply try to educate them in the open source sector, And then we try to give them a little bit of this glimpse of what a Bitaxe device is. And also we obviously also spoke about the efficiency of these devices and what we have reached so far, and what our midterm and long-term goals for this community and for those devices that we have created is in the long-term run. And this was quite interesting, because some of those people, they really didn't understand the fact, why would you need something like an open source device? And at some point, when you do ask yourself, why do we need an open source device? It's not an easy question to answer. And even I myself, sometimes I need to think about this question, because I do think like, man, why are we doing this? And obviously, for me, I do have a personal answer, but I do get the point from those people who are just in this fiat business and this fiat thinking, that are just thinking about short-term goals that they do have. And most of them obviously will ask things like, hey, what's going on with the efficiency with these devices, and what was going on, or how much do these devices cost? That were some of those general questions that we had there. And I'm trying to think about everything that we had there. Eddie, if you want to come up on stage and just talk on your own a little bit, you can feel free and do so. I'm quickly taking a look in the chat. Kniggins is writing 21 Energy, TerraHash, and some guys from TerraHash, from Bitmain were there as well. Yeah, that's true. So, as I said, most of those companies were these hosting companies, and we as a little booth there, just standing there and trying to spread the word of open source and the thinking of open source and the ethos. That was quite hard, because I'd say 30% of those people who came along and asked us, why are we doing this, they were not satisfied by the fact that we are telling them that the shift of mining and the ethos of mining is in a totally wrong direction going currently. Because my thought when I do answer this question is usually, think about it. You do usually trust these people or these companies that do give you your Visa card, your EC card, your Giro card, or whatever, or your MasterCard, whatever it is, and you do pay at the counter. That's usually, normally you don't think about what's going on in the background. But this thinking is only in the society, I do believe, because it is well known, and it has been and it will be there probably for a couple more years. So people are used to it. But Bitcoin and the currency and this peer-to-peer network behind this is, relatively speaking, so new that most of those people are not really used to it. So they don't really see this as an actual financing or finance system that they will or could use. So most of those people who are on such events are usually hodlers or people who are trying to get into it and learn a little bit about it. But most of them, they do start in small sections and in those two pillars of Bitcoin that are not that important in my opinion. Because when I do speak about Bitcoin, I always refer back to it and I say, look, Bitcoin does have three pillars. The first pillar is the nodes and the blockchain itself. The second pillar is how transactions are proceeded. And the third pillar is the mining and how mining works. And then people usually refer to this and or think about it as like a 30% or 33% equal for each of those pillars, which I do think is wrong, because in my opinion, mining is the core part of Bitcoin, because without mining, those two other pillars would not work. That's always what I'm trying to tell them, and then those people sometimes do get it and say, yeah, you're not right about it. You're not wrong about it. That's totally correct. Mining seems to be this technique behind everything that needs to be kept up, or at least needs to be trusted. And as soon as I do reach this point in a conversation with those people, I then go over to the switch and say, okay, look, so you do trust your Visa card or your MasterCard or whatever, because you use it, but you don't really see the financial system behind it, so you cannot grasp what's going on from a technology standpoint. But with Bitcoin, people usually say don't trust verify, and then people set up a node at home or even do their own signing of transactions, and then they call it a day. And maybe they do have something like a mining device at home, but usually they do have something from a big company like Antminer, WhatsMiner, or so on, you name it. The issue with that is that these people never thought about it, that this is the core part of it, and this is the part that needs to be verified, as well as everything else. This verifying is obviously something that is intriguing to Bitcoin because it is the base core of it when it comes to the blockchain and how transactions work. But the base part of this, like the underground part of this, is the mining. Without it, it wouldn't work. So that's what I'm trying to do, to tell those people to get into it and trying to think about it, so that they do get the point of, okay, all right, I see. Mining seems to be this thing that we need to have in our mind in order to understand what else is going on in this Bitcoin space. Without it, transactions would never be verified. Without it, the blockchain would just be halted, basically. It doesn't matter how much mining hash power we do have, it just matters that we do have some. And then thinking about it, of saying, all right, how could you trust this manufacturer who is producing proprietary hardware and then is producing proprietary software, is not publishing it, but is just claiming money on it, and you just call it a day and you believe everything is working all right? I do call this silly, and I always will, and that's the issue. People usually then start to think about it and say, yeah, okay, all right, so I do get it, so then I need to trust and or try to verify my Antminer. But this also brings up another issue. The trust in this manufacturer could be, for the moment, a thing that you could achieve, but as soon as they do change anything, how could you be sure that nothing has been changed on your end as well? And obviously, we do know, and I'm trying to lead this today's session in some way of an orientation. I'm not going crazy about it. I'm still trying to think about all those things that has happened yesterday on this Bitcoin forum, and I will go back to this in just a second. I just want to get you all on the same point here. So usually when those companies do try to change things in their system, obviously we do have the hardware part and the software part, and grasping the glance of it and how you could use it is not easy. I mean, we as Open Source Miners United and this Bitaxe project is the best proof for it that it can be achieved. It's hard and it took years in order to achieve all this knowledge that we do have nowadays, but it is a needed factor in order to keep up with the current market and those conditions of this network. Because I'm not sure if you guys follow along a couple of those Twitter or X channels, how are they called? Now they are called X. And there's one X account, Monolautics, I believe is his name, who's posting usually or generally about these transactions from those big pools. And he's trying to make a glance about this, how those pools interact with each other and how or which kind of custodian they do use. And it appears to be, from what we can see on the blockchain, of transactions on the blockchain, that roughly 47% of all mining hash rate is been used within one custodian. I'm not saying that all of them do proxy their hash rate together, and I'm not saying that we could see a 51% attack or anything else. I'm just saying there's something going in the background, and it seems like for cold storage and custodian usage, 47% of them do use the same, which could also lead to an issue. I'm just wanting to make a point here. The thing with mining is, as soon as we do trust blindly someone and do not verify, or even don't have the ability to verify, and I'm not talking about a technical standpoint of view, and I'm not talking about a inability to read code or to understand hardware. This is something completely different. But we do not have, with any of those companies currently, the ability to verify anything that they are doing. And this is one potential risk for everybody. Imagine you do order yourself a miner from X company, whatever. And then you do set this up at home and you take a look on the hash rate and you think everything is all right. What do you think they do in the background? You have no idea about it. I do not have any idea about it. We try to look into it, but what we do have done, and I've done a couple of those sniffing sessions with Decentral and with Scott together, where we tried to sniff these serial commands between the control board and the actual hash board, so between those ASIC chips and the brain of the operation who is trying to keep up with all those chips. And this is something that you can sniff. But what actually is going on these boards is even harder to grasp, because it is software written on it, and with the limited ability of using those control boards, you do have limited abilities of what you even can do. So this leads to the issue of you need to trust this control board. You need to trust it that it really sends all your hashes over to this point. And even worse, if you do use one of their supported pools, you're not even sure about what their pool is doing. Like with with public pool, for example, which is an open source developed pool from this community here by Ben, and thanks to you, by the way, for this. You do have the ability to check out the code. You do have the ability to check out, okay, what kind of interaction do we see from the Stratum protocol to the node? What's going on there? You also do have the ability to run this at home, because it's completely open source. And this changes everything, as well for the hardware and the software. We are not standing still on this point. The thing about making such device and such hardware and software open source is in order to give back this knowledge that we had and that we gain these days, to do not forget the knowledge that we have achieved so far. Bitcoin is trying to make a point on, okay, we need to trust and verify what we do have verified. We cannot trust anything that we have not verified. That's the thing. But currently the market says, okay, you need to trust at least on the hardware level point and on the software from these hardware devices. That's it. And most of those people do call it a day. And usually I'd say that's totally fine, but not for a financial system at Bitcoin. And trying to make my way back to this initial conversation that I'm trying to achieve here, where I do tell people, think about it. You don't think about your Visa card because you're used to the financial system. But with Bitcoin, we do have a complete new system that is trying to eliminate this factor of bankings and governmental usage or regulations. And how could you run such a system if you do change the system to become the problem itself? And that's what's happening, on my personal opinion, currently in the Bitcoin mining industry. I'm not saying that this is happening on any other of those three pillars that I pointed out, but I do think from the mining standpoint of view, it's definitely an issue, because we do see this shift. And we also do have this issue that I sadly haven't spoken much about on this event, which is proxy pooling. So we talked a little bit about the hardware and that you do not can grasp what's going on there, and then the software. And now we do have this interaction with the blockchain, the node, and your mining protocol that you're using. Most of the people these days do use Stratum V1, and the issue with this is that you do need to trust this pool operator. And usually I'd say, all right, we're now sitting at 2024, everything is all right, the blockchain has not collapsed, everything is all right, so Bitcoin is still working. That's correct. But this trust level that we try to achieve, or that the ethos of Bitcoin is trying to achieve, this has been forgotten since 2014. That's my personal opinion, and I'm trying to say you why. In 2014, we have seen the shift from big companies like Bitmain away from this open source sector of GPU, CPU, and FPGA mining into the section of ASIC mining. And we are aware about the fact that there is only one single document that is kinda explaining the technical points about an ASIC chip from Bitmain. And after this, nothing ever has been released. So since 2014, all those ASIC chips that Bitmain has ever released, they never have been published. You don't know what's really going on these chips. And obviously, we do know how they interact, and we gladly had the opportunity to figure it out and to think and tinker about it. And now we do have published all those informations on GitHub and on all those other platforms that we are using. So we're trying to make even this closed source hardware kind of open source again. Obviously, we cannot produce them because this is way, way more complex than I believe what we can achieve here. But we do have plenty of intelligent people in this community who also do have brilliant ideas, or even might be working in this kind of scene and could lead this technology and this thinking about open source into the hardware level itself even more. So I do hope, and I do know that there is a company who's trying to produce open source ASIC chips, but I do hope with all this interest that we now do gain with this movement and this community, to actually not only spread this idea of gaining back the whole trust about Bitcoin mining, but I do hope that we also incentivize people to think about it and even use or give their ability of whatever they can do for the greater good of the community. And I do know this was a long take from me, but that's usually how I try to get into this conversation with you in order to understand of what is my point of view of everything. And that's also what I try to do on this event, because people were approaching us and people were asking us, why is there even a need for this? And obviously you can shrug and you can say, okay, if you don't get it, if you don't think about open source, then it's it. Walk away and have a nice day. That's something you could do. But usually what I do tell those people is, think about it. Don't trust anybody. Don't trust me. I mean, prove it. Prove it on your own. Obviously, you need to have some kind of knowledge. You need to have some sort of a degree, not even a degree, but you need to have some sort of this knowledge in order to understand what's going on. And this is totally hard. But this is also good with this community that we do have here, because we have people in this community that are willing to give away their knowledge for free, or at least try to dive into a specific topic in order to tell you what is going on. And Knickens is already writing in the chat again. He just wrote, we just need a couple of $1 million and order ASICs as TSMC. Yeah, probably this would be a nice idea, but I do think a couple $1 million would not be enough to actually have any ASICs that could compete with what we do see here. And as I mentioned, there's a company that is trying to produce open source ASIC chips, and if I'm not mistaken, OSMU already has done some sort of contact with them. But I do think this is months, maybe even years ahead in the future of actually seeing a product that you could use. I'm not really sure about this. I'm not too deep into this conversation, so I could not really tell anything about this. But I do hope that you do get the point that there is this need for this trustability back again in Bitcoin. Because I always laugh at those people who are coming along and sitting at a meeting and then just talking about Bitcoin, that they do run their own node and that they do sign their own transactions, and to the moon, tomorrow they will be billionaires. All right, got it. It's fine. I don't care. The thing what I do care about this financial network is, as soon as we do ignore the trust part, this network has been failed. And we need to accomplish a complete new scene for those people, or a complete new mindset for those people, in order to gain back what we already have lost. There are, even today, a couple of people who are mining with old or deprecated hardware, which is probably not worth it. Some of them, you might be calling them nerd miners. They also do use low hardware, which is not really able to do anything compete-wise with these big machines. That's correct. But they do fulfill this idea of giving back this knowledge, or at least use this knowledge in such a way that you could reproduce it or give it to the next generation. And if we do not keep up with this idea that we need to bring back this open source ethos of Bitcoin mining, then I'm not sure how long Bitcoin can survive with this. Because imagine, and this is just theoretically speaking, there would be some sort of a software update for all those Bitmain devices or what's miners or whatsoever. And you could not verify it because you have no idea, or you have no possible way to interact with this machine at such a deep level of understanding what kind of code is running on this. And this device, out of a sudden, after update, is now sending 20% of the shares to some other pool, to some other address. You could not verify this. Obviously, what you could do on a networking point is you could try to see this or try to eliminate it by blocking a couple IP addresses or something like this. But even then, we have seen other ASIC manufacturers from some shitcoins that do have produced something like a dev fee in the ASIC manufacturer firmware, which says, okay, like 2 or 3% of those shares will not go to the pool that has been set in the mining settings, but it will go to another pool. And if you do block this second pool where they will use these shares for their own good, then they will shut down your device. That's an interesting topic, isn't it? We haven't seen it now in Bitmain. I believe dev fees is more something that originates back to GPU miners, because this was used back in the days in order to fund new producers of software or firmware updates for GPU miners. So it was quite common. But this is also a complete scene on its own. Some people agree that this is all right, some people don't agree on this. I don't want to give a point about this, so I'm just making this theoretical point about this. Having this backdoor from a manufacturer is a potential risk, which would not only risk your own benefit of not achieving all those shares to your own pool, but it would also be this backdoor for them to actually attack a network. And we do have seen all those legendary talks about no way, 51% attack is these days no longer possible. That's what you think? I mean, sure, when we try to make numbers about this and when we try to set up a complete new farm and just dedicate it to a specific node in order to handle our block templates in a specific manner, so that we, for example, block a couple of transactions or that we backward a couple of transactions, this is such a hard hurdle that you probably will never achieve at this point where we are at with Bitcoin these days. But if a manufacturer who is in use of over 60% of the hash rate is just doing a software update and is fucking everybody, oh god, I'm not sure what could happen. And this is a serious problem, I do believe, and this is the reason why I try to walk around and try to educate those people that we do need this verifiability back again. And one of the most beautiful features that I have seen recently, I already have talked about it, but that I've seen is from Thomas, the inventor of PyX and the QX and the 0xX. He has written the PyMiner, or rewritten the original PyMiner to a functional one for his PyX and the QX and so on. And he has implemented a function that says verify solo. It's completely simple. It just takes the block header, so the question you can say for your miner, and then your miner works over this question and gives back an answer. But then this question that the miner gets, there is this template about where will those Bitcoin go if this miner finds a block. And usually if you do mine to a pool, your miner gets the address of the pool, and you will not be rewarded on chain, you will be rewarded later on by the calculation from the pool. So you do just a third party. But with this function that he implemented in PyMiner, in the software that controls his devices, it checks if this address is exactly the address that you used in order to mine, to start this mining function. And if this is a different one, or a second one appears that do get a couple percentages of the Bitcoin block, then it will just stop. It will not work. It will force close the mining operation. It will shut down. And this is pure verifiability on the blockchain, on the block template level. It's super simple. It's not even hard. It's simply just one function that you can implement in your software to make sure that when you do try to solo mine, that you do get it. And nobody else. And I do need to make a break here and go also in the other direction of talking about pool mining. We do have seen that a couple of those big pools rise and fall and have been fallen, but I do get it from a company that is trying to run a mining operation that they do need funds each day in order to pay the bill for electricity and so on. But this is not driving forward the decentralization point of view that Bitcoin does have. It only drives forward the incentivize of making money. And this incentivize of making money is only a theory that comes along from this fiat thinking, from this mentality of just making money in order to buy something. And I'm not talking about that you should not think about making money, because everybody needs to buy a bread and needs to have a home to stay, or at least some sort of a bed to sleep. Obviously, this is something that is essential and everybody needs and everybody should have. But this thinking about, okay, I need to do every single day, I need to use Bitcoin in order to make money, in order to pay out and pay my bills, this is suitable for a company. But for this ethos that is behind Bitcoin, I do believe this is counterintuitive, because this doesn't make sense. From a decentralization standpoint, you do point all your hash rate, and it doesn't matter how many people are doing this, to one centralized operation. How does this even make sense? And you usually as a user don't really get it, but those companies that do run pools or that do run these mining facilities, even though that you do have a nice contract with them and pay only 4 cents per kilowatt hour, that's totally fine. But these companies, they do have regulations. They need to be compliant to, I don't know, their governments or their jurisdictions. It's insanity. How could you do such a thing? Obviously, as I said, I do get it. If you need to pay your bills, it is what it is. But about the decentralization, what we do speak about here in Open Source Miners United, and what we try to spread around and make more mindset about this, it belongs to the people to come back to mining. It belongs to the people to think again about it, that you do need to use something maybe at home. And even though that you only have 500 gigahashes with a Bitaxe device, you're participating to the network in a good way. And the best way doing this would be not point this to any pool that you do think is nice, like Solo Pool or Public Pool or Brains or whatsoever, and you name it. Don't point it to any of those pools. Just set up your pool at home. If you do have an Umbrel node, go in the App Store and install Public Pool. It is not then somewhere in the cloud. It's your own node at home. It's your own block template that you do create on your own pool that you do have at home. It sounds super simple, and it is. And this is the manner that drives forward the decentralization and nothing else. And I do know I've now talked about it plenty of minutes about it, what I do think about decentralization and how we should approach it. But this event that we have been at yesterday was mostly about those hosting facilities and hosting in general. And probably it's nice to have such a low energy consumption or energy cost rate. But I don't know. Like I don't get it. I used to did it, and my contract with this facility has been expired, gladly. So I will probably never do this again. But let's go back to this Bitcoin forum that we have been at. So I do hope that you now, from what I've said in the early part of today's town hall, that you do have a glimpse of how it looked like. What I haven't talked about is how these two stages that we had looked like. So I talked about that you do go upstairs, and then there's one area with companies that do accept Bitcoin or do something with Bitcoin, and then you do need to go up another staircase in order to come to the mining section. This mining section was quite small, but we had a small speaking area next to it. And this speaking area was usually about mining, and before these mining sessions started, there were a group, I'm sorry if I do pronounce it wrong, Les Fameuses Oranges, I don't know, I can't speak French. This is a community that is just trying to, it's quite interesting, it's like driven by women, for women, in complete Bitcoin. It's only Bitcoin, and this is something that has started there, and then later on they switched to these mining facility companies, and then they had their talks, and it was quite nice. And speaking about these mining facilities, we also had a small company next to our booth. So if you do take a look on this picture, you do see there's a screen with a newsletter where you can sign in. This was from the company next to us. We just used the table in order to put on our banner up there. But this company was quite interesting. They're called Keller Mining, and they are from Austria. And what they do is brilliant. They teach people how they can use Bitcoin mining devices, whatever they are, doesn't matter, and use an heat exchanger in order to use the excessive heat of a Bitcoin mining device to heat up your water at home, or in general your home. And the way how they did it is just lovely. I mean, it sounds simple, but it is mind tricking. Like, you think about it. Some people do heat their warm water with electricity, and now you do have this option to use excessive heat from a Bitcoin mining device. So theoretically, you may be paying more on an electricity standpoint of view, but you do get back so much money in Bitcoin if you use pool mining. I know we're getting back to this topic. It is a big circle, and you're always coming back to this topic, but you do have more money at the end of the month if you do it this way than just using a regular electricity used heating device in your warm water reservoir. This is just brilliant, and I just wanted to point this out because I do love to talk to those people, and it was just so amazing. And I talked to, or we, like Eddie, Ronnie and I, we talked to plenty of people, and plenty of people had plenty of questions there. And at some point it was 4:40 p.m. and then it was time for me to go onto the stage. I was on this small mining stage there that I just talked about just a second ago, and then I tried to introduce OSMU. So I was going there, and I was trying to approach them with the same manner that I talked to you those last 20 minutes about. So I was asking them, I was trying to get honest with them. I was saying, all right, guys, listen, think about it. I want you to raise your hand if you do agree to one of those things. So I said, all right, you probably have been at a Bitcoin meetup or event before, right? And a couple of them raised their hands. And then I said, all right, now be honest with yourself and please think about it. What was this event about? I said, was it about the price? A couple of them raised their hand. I said, all right. Was it about nodes? A couple more raised their hand. I said, all right. Was it about transactions and how they do work? A couple more raised their hands. And then I said, all right. Was it about privacy? Even more raised their hands. And then I said, all right. Was it about mining? And then I said, an extra, I'm not talking about using a hosting service. I'm talking about what mining is, how mining works, what the ethos of mining is. And not a single hand was up. Not a single one. And this was so interesting. And I'm sorry, Kniggins. Maybe I've overseen that. You said you raised your hand. I'm sorry for that. Okay, so then I need to revert my answer here. So one hand was up. I'm sorry for that. So I said, all right, this is an interesting part that we need to talk about, because most of these people that are at these events, they usually don't think about it because you don't see it. These events are usually about nodes, privacy, transactions, and where can I host my device. That's it. And when it comes to mining, hosting is the only thing that has been introduced to those people. And I do think this is an issue. That's the way I made with the introduction into OSMU, that I said, all right, we are here as a community. We are not a company. We are not some sort of a foundation or anything else. We don't want your money. We are here for the ethos, for the original one of Bitcoin, to bring back the knowledge and let it be verifiable. If you don't do it, then you do have so many issues in the network, because how could you trust it if you do not have the ability to verify it? It's impossible. And that's the issue that we had a couple years back with the banking crisis and so on. And even hundreds or 1,000 years back, they also had systems that failed. For what reason? They couldn't verify it. Even if you're just thinking 500 years back, your local landlord who was raising your taxes, you had no idea what's going on in the background. Maybe this was not originally the point of failing for those systems, but it was one of them. And the ethos of Open Source Miners United is to erase this limitation of people not being able to understand what's going on in the mining scene. Because we are not trying to be any competitor to Bitmain or WhatsMiner, because they have focused in the industrial point of view of Bitcoin mining. And this is all right. But we need to start small. And that's the reason why we do have the Bitaxe. We need to incentivize those people to think about what is Bitcoin, how does it work. All right, there's some crazy dude in the internet on some sort of a portal that's named Discord, and he told me how this works. That's amazing. All right, and then he sent me a link where I can even read through the code. And if I don't trust what he's uploading somewhere, I can just check it myself, build it on my own from source, and I can verify that this is working in this manner how it should be. Insanity. This mindset, I think, I brought back to a couple of those people. Some people were leaving later on because I was just talking about open source and mining. Maybe that's not interesting for all of them, but that's all right. It doesn't matter. What I've seen in the crowd, and this was so amazing and fulfilled this whole day for me, was I've seen plenty of people agreeing with me and had this eye-opening moment of, oh my goodness, he's right. Something is wrong in this industry, and we might need to think about this twice. Because maybe we cannot change it from today to tomorrow. Maybe it takes a couple of years, but it's definitely something that could attack the network in general. And nobody's speaking about it. Oh my goodness. And raising this awareness for those people was one of the best moments there. And yeah, just in general, I was so stunned after the day. Obviously, I had like, what was it, 8 to 9 hours we were there, and just talking non-stop. And sometimes even things twice or 3 times in a row because people are not listening, and then the next one is joining in and is asking the same question. That's all right, but you need to start at some point. And this event was just so brilliant. And what I said in the beginning of today's podcast here is that this event has been held by a bank. So this counterintuitive thinking about how could a bank do this? They do shovel at their own grave. This is stupidity. No, it's not. It's kind of interesting because what they did, they set up an event page, an event location for the people to be crowded together to tinker about all those things. It doesn't matter if it's in the right direction or not, but they gave the people the opportunity to do so. And obviously they do have their own standpoint of view of why they do this, and probably they also want to make a buck on this. But what I've heard so far from them, and I mean, I'm not a customer of them, so I cannot verify this, but maybe someone else is and can verify this later on. What I've heard about them is they do stick to this ethos of not your keys, not your coins. So they do, as a bank, they do this consultant part of educating you or leading you to Bitcoin, how you could use it in this financial world that we are in right now. But they are no custodian, so they will never take your coins. They always will teach you in the way of, okay, how can I do this on my own? Or how can I do this as a company? And this was so mind-blowing to me, to seeing this, that there is this bank that's doing this. It was just amazing for me. As I said, I'm not a customer of them, so I cannot verify this, but I've seen I've heard positive comments about this as well yesterday, so I kind of tend to trust this. But that's the point. It's interesting to see that even in the banking system, we do see some sort of a shift. Usually what you do read at the news is just some FUD or maybe some bad news about who's trying to make the next regulation about Bitcoin. yeah, that's usually what people are interested in. People are not really interested in good news. This is nothing that drives forward the high clicks, the high views on your blog entry or on your newspaper. So you need to have bad news. It is what it is. It's the thing how we humans work. It's sad, but it is what it is. But I just needed to point this out because I think this is important to see that there are not everywhere this bad banking sector. There are a couple good people under them that do tend to understand what's going on. All right, let me see. So the last part that I could tell you about from this event is there was a second stage, but I had no time to take a look on what was going on there. So while you walk upstairs, the first staircase, it would lead into this big new room. But they started at 5 p.m., so they started really late, and then they had a couple of speakers on this big stage. But as I said, I cannot tell you anything about it. What I do know, some of those speeches have been broadcasted live, so some of them should be available somewhere. And yeah, it was just good. It was a good place to be honest. And I do hope that I will get the opportunity again to be there and educate more people, because I do know the next event of the Bitcoin Forum in Germany will be next year in October, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't written down the exact date, but I do know there's a next event also hosted from this bank, and they even said it will be in a much bigger place, in a much larger scale. So they try to gain more people and gain more interest. And just think about it, this event was so massive. We had like, let's put it in numbers, like 500 people there, at least 500 people there, like over the course of the day, even more probably. It's enormous what they did. And next year they want 1,200, they said. See, even bigger, man. It's so many people there. At some point I just was going offline in my brain because it was so much. Oh man, it was so good. It was such a perfect place to be, to get in there, and it was quite interesting. I was invited to this scene or to this event from a hosting provider, because I had a discussion with them early on, and I was e-begging. I learned this new word a couple of days ago. So e-begging is whenever you try to do begging online. I saw about this Bitcoin forum somewhere on X a couple of months ago, and I was writing every single day. I was writing them, hey, I want to be there. We need to teach them what is open source. We need to teach them what's Open Source Miners United. We need to go there, man. And I was doing this every day until they answered to me and said, oh, okay, yeah, this sounds interesting. And there we go. I did e-begging. That's quite interesting. It was funny. It was a really good event. There was obviously also a couple other funny things, like you could order a beer with Bitcoin, a so-called beer tab. You could order popcorn with Bitcoin, or your next ginger ale or whatsoever. It was good. It was good. The food that was there was way too expensive, but that's usually what it is at such events. It is what it is. But it was good. It was good. Let me take a look on the chat. Ben wrote, big reason to open source mining hardware is to guarantee no backdoors from foreign adversaries. This could be done on the firmware level, hardware level, or even ASIC level. There is a reason governments pay more in source-sensitive electronics locally. Yep, he's totally right. And Kniggins wrote, I heard a story today. A customer of this bank got asked if he wants to buy Bitcoin. For him, it is a simple entry to get invested. Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I do think it's good to have a customer at your, like from the standpoint of view of a bank, have a customer and ask them, hey, don't you want to get into Bitcoin? Because we are in this scene. We would like to give our knowledge to you. Probably, that's my thinking. Probably they do charge people for their knowledge, but that's all right. I mean, it is okay. Sure. Speaking about Foss and what's so on, we tend to have a different standpoint of view of what we want to make open source. And if I would be the one who was ruling things, I would say make everything open source. But yeah, it's not gonna happen. I do know this. And Kniggins also wrote, next event shall be in the Saturn Arena, 4,816 people possible. That's amazing. I do hope that we do see this event there, and I do hope that OSMU as a community will gain the access next year again, because I bet you guys, if we do get the access again, I will be there, and I try to get on the big stage, because guys, we need to tell more people about Open Source Miners United. And without people, we would not survive. Without the interest from people, we would not survive. And I do hope that you guys still are interested in what's going on. And obviously, from sometimes nothing much is going on, or it appears to be nothing is updating, or sometimes even weeks nothing is going forward. It is what it is. This process is sometimes slow, but I do hope we're not losing you at some point. I do hope that you will stick to it, and that you think what we are doing is amazing. And I encourage everybody of you, just join in. Just do your best at sharing what you do think about it. And I had this discussion with Crypto Eyes a couple of weeks ago, where he said it doesn't matter if you are able to program to do something hardware-wise or whatever. Nothing should keep you away from sharing your idea. If you do think it's worth it, do it. Even though that you think you cannot do it, no way. Make it possible. Even like as he said, if you do have an idea and you think you're not capable of doing so, maybe try to share this idea. Maybe you can find someone else who's trying to accomplish this achievement with you together. And that's the perfect explanation for this community, because we try to do everything together. I mean, I have so many examples here. One of them is that I wrote my diagnostics task for my master thesis, and I'm totally ass when it comes to UI and stuff. And sometimes I probably should take a little bit more time to take a look into a couple of things so that I could understand them. But I had Ben around, and I asked him, hey, could you help me with this? Just implement a simple button for me, and the rest I can do on my own. And he agreed, and he just quickly helped me. And it took a couple minutes for him, and for me it probably would have taken more than that. But it's super simple, and it is worth sharing ideas, and it's worth of making a ethos of Bitcoin the right place again. Yeah. Let's see. Do we have any questions? Someone wants to ask anything? Someone wants to come on stage? Because from this event, I think I've spoken about everything. Eddie, do you think I'm missing on anything? Do you think there's anything else to say? You can even write in German in the chat. I'll try to translate it. Let me see. Kniggins wrote in the chat, Andreas Streb, the man at Volksbank, said they suggest to store your Bitcoin on a hardware wallet. Once the amount represents bigger amounts of value, they just serve the entry and give entry information. Interesting. All right. I mean, that's not bad. That's all right. Giving people information and telling them what would be the best solution for them on own storage. That's just genius. It's just lovely. Let's see. Phyllis writing in the chat. Did the visitors know Bitaxe? That's a good question. So when we started this session today, I just said it in one sentence. So some of them who were approaching us, it was super funny. Oh, let me tell you some funny stories. Now the good part comes. So some of them knew us, and some of them said, "Oh yeah, OSMU, I do know this. That's nice. I was thinking about purchasing a Bitaxe on my own, but I was not really sure about it." And one issue was, and this was really bad, some people asked if we do know this derivat of Bitaxe, this Chinese copy thingy. And then I needed to explain to them, all right, take a look on this. This is our product, basically an old copy, and they made it closed source again. So please do yourself a favor and don't use it, because, I mean, we'd love to give you support, but we can't. We don't know what's going on there. We just know that they copycatted us and they do it in a bad way. So I'd say 20 to 25% of those visitors, they did know what Bitaxe is. Some of them didn't know that OSMU exists, but some of them know that Bitaxe is a product that they can purchase. So that was a great one. And one of the funniest stories was for me, I mean, obviously you guys know I do have my YouTube channel called One Clue, and there was a grandma. I'm sorry if I'm if I'm estimating something here wrong, but there was a grandma, probably, so from the age her, she was like 60, 70, and I was really impressed about this, and I really need to tell this. She was coming along, she was seeing me. Oh, that's One Clue. I do know him from YouTube. And I was just so blown away by this sentence, man. I was like, what the fuck? This old lady is knowing me? What's going on here? This was super funny for me, because just to give you a glance about this, I'd say 60 to 70% of those people going around there, they were probably 40, 50 plus from an age perspective. And this was so mind-blowing to me, because I never have really been to any Bitcoin event of this size. And I usually thought that these days, even though that Bitcoin now exists over than 10 years, that it still is something for this hip young people. But this event proved me wrong, and I'm so thankful for this, because now I do know there's so more people that are really interested in it. And I don't know, like so many people, old, young, whatever, they were just interested. And this old lady that I just talked about a second ago, she was even asking me a couple of technical questions. I was just so blown away. But she did a couple of mistakes by explaining what she's thinking about Bitcoin and so on. But even though she knew so much more than 80% of all these other Bitcoiners, it was so mind-blowing to me. This was enormous. I just loved it to have a conversation with her. Easy on the ageism, haha, yeah. I'm sorry, but I mean, I'm young. I'm a young dude. It's just my estimation. And to be fair, I only had the point of view from my booth, so I was not really sure what was going on this big stage. The big stage probably had enough room for 300 people, chair-wise, but I've not taken a look in this event or on the stage while something was going on there. I just hadn't had the time, because we had so many people at the booth, or just going around and doing some networking. It was impossible for me to take a look on all those people. And just from those people who came along to our booth and talked with us, the bigger amount of them were plus 40. So that was just interesting to me, and I just love to see this. That's just enormous. Because proving myself wrong is one of the best things to do. 1,200 balconies were there as well. Oh yeah. Is it? Really? That many? So, I mean, I said it was a theater, so probably they do have plenty of balconies. But yeah, it was definitely an amazing event, and I can't thank enough those people for inviting us over there. And it just was so amazing. I'm still mind blown a little bit, and I still need to recap a couple of those things. But speaking about this event, it just feels good, and I do hope that you now have a little bit of an idea of what was going on there. It was enormous, and we had more than 1,200 people there, so it was really good. And it was just nice being there. Sadly, and Duncan joined back. We hadn't had Duncan over there, but it is what it is. Maybe next year, buddy. I do hope that you will then join in, because it will happen next year again, later on next year. But yeah, let's see. All right, so we are now sitting at 1 hour and 4 minutes. If you do not have any other questions or anything else, then I'll close this. I'll quickly read over what we do see in the chat. Knicken says, writing open source mining was what I found without expecting. Oh, that's interesting. Would you like to express this a little bit more? Maybe you even want to come upstairs, up on the stage and just have a chat if you want. Don't feel the need for it. Welcome on stage, Knings.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to say I that was my first Bitcoin event I visited, and yeah, it was so nice to. The first thing I saw was an end miner from Bitmain, and it was like to the guy standing there at his booth was saying, "This is the first time I see this hardware in real." And a couple of minutes after that, I found Want Clue at his booth explaining his devices to me, and I was like, "What? This is really great stuff. This is exactly what I wanted to find." So that made my day for that. And yeah, afterwards in the main stage, it's a really huge theater, and they said they are able to host 1,200 people, and I don't think all the balconies were completely full, but still at least close to 1,000 people were there.
That's just
And
mind-blowing.
yeah, and the speakers, if you're not German, you might probably don't know them. They were really great. Andreas Streb is the guy from the Volksbank. It's a really, how do I describe it? They are completely, old-fashioned, because I don't know when they started their business. It's a very old and trustfully bank, it's nice to hear some banking people adopting. And then they had Nico Jilch from Austria, who is from the investment part, turning into Bitcoin after several years of looking at it. And they had Roman Rea, who has the Block Trainer channel in Germany, very successful, very nice type of, I would call it, journalism on the topic Bitcoin. So yeah, it was for me. I mean, that part I knew already from YouTube, but the great thing was actually finding the information about open source mining, which is, for me, one part of the decentralization.
That's so great. Thanks for sharing this. It was an amazing day, and I was a little bit. I couldn't speak any longer after this day. I was coming back home, and my throat was killing me, but it was just amazing. And telling these people what we are doing was just feeling so great, and I hope that we can be at the next event again.
Yeah, I hope the same. Yeah.
All right. So then, if you do not have anything else, I'd like to close this with your expression of what you have experienced there. It's lovely to hear other people talking about it. And I thank everybody for joining in here today, and I thank everybody later on listening onto this here on YouTube for joining in. And I do hope that we see each other at some other event, maybe someday in the future. All right. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for being here, and see you next time.